Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Here is Samson's take. Ghana today, a failing democracy. Today, Ghana, despite the strides it has made in democracy and good governance, is confronted with a new set of challenges. These challenges I only term new because they encompass a blend of historical issues dating back to pre-colonial times and contemporary challenges arising from evolving practices. However, one fundamental reality is evident. We have yet to fully harness the potential of democracy as a catalyst for sustainable development. There are still many questions that need answers. Why does 70% of our population still grapple with poverty? Why is our national debt burden soaring? Who owns our natural resources? Stop and think about it. Why does our food security hang in the balance due to events in faraway places like Russia and Ukraine? Now we may be adding Israel and Palestine. What has led to the precarious state of our healthcare and education systems? And where is the accessibility to decent housing and other social amenities? Where are the dividends of democracy? So far, I have been reading from a speech by Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chambers on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of Star Ghana Foundation on the topic Empowering Citizens, Enriching Nation Building, Fostering Active Citizenship for Sustainable Development in Ghana. I moderated that program. And one thing was obvious. People were disappointed in this democracy. The same week, I had the privilege of speaking to a group of soldiers about this state and what can be done to ensure the democracy works through free and fair elections, credible elections. And I understood the disappointments. We live in a state where there is no consequence for wrongdoing. That's the problem. The finance minister presented the budget, and we'll show you a video, after which he goes to his ministry, and the civil servants line up praising him over what they call the Nkunim budget, victory budget. In Parliament, the opposition will not listen and take notes so they can make constructive criticism of the budget. Those in government, the MPs you pay to sit in Parliament, those in government, will also not listen, but shouts of praise to an austere budget, an IMF-propelled budget. They shout praise, then the opposition shouts, hell has broken loose on us. MPs paid with your money to do a job. They won't listen. Get the experts, get people to break it down for them. Some of them asked them today what they had in the budget. It will not be anything that was in the budget. It will be political propaganda sounds. So the democracy is a failing one. I'll show you why. I'm doing a two-part series on this. 19 Ghanaian lives have been lost in only a couple of weeks because the renal unit of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital had to shut down for a debt of 4 million cedis only. About the same time, only 2 politicians, through an estimated 140 million cedis at party delegates to vote them to contest to become president. And they justify it. An MP has announced publicly that he has hoarded dollars and is going to bribe delegates. He's going to pay the highest among the competitors. All these are walking free, no consequences. The party doesn't feel anything to reprimand this MP. Officers of the central bank will be indicted in public commentaries as obviously complicit in making a corrupt business in doling out liquidity funds, public funds, to banks that did not deserve it, and they didn't follow the regulatory processes in monitoring, leading to a banking crisis that will cost the state more than 25 billion. Money we didn't have. Money the state does not have, and which will not bring the economy to its status or a good shape. It actually brought the economy to its knees at the least exposure, and there is no consequence for a single official at the central bank. The people have accepted to pay a bank levy to try to recover the loss. The people who did nothing wrong about this. A whole constituency is deprived of representation in parliament for a whole term, 4 years. And those responsible have an excuse. And the people accept that excuse. There is no consequence for the public officers who ought to have known better and avoided the injustice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or so people got killed in one election. And it is treated as though their lives don't matter at all. An MP and a leader of the parliament publicly declares them criminals who deserved being killed. He has not apologized. He still sits in the people's parliament and just may become their vice president. In this sham of a democracy, unarmed civilians in their hundreds are woken from sleep by the sounds of army helicopter. They are pulled out of their beds in their homes into the rain in Ashaiman by soldiers. They are beaten. Injuries inflicted on them, we see it publicly. And they are made to lie in flooding mud in the rain. The army round up 184 of them and march them away in the name of intelligence about the unfortunate killing of a trooper. These are all later released as police, by proper intelligence, arrest some 6 suspects and put them before court for due process of law. Occupy Ghana, CDD, and a few others, including the Shraj, condemn the state-sponsored terrorism. They demand accountability and compensation for the victims. Your president does not blink Your parliaments, the people's representatives, the soldiers go there, sit before them. There is no an official apology yet. And absolutely nothing has been done to these people. They cannot exact justice when the commander-in-chief refuses to act. Tell me what else is a failing democracy. How does a failing democracy look like? The president commissions a constitution review commission that travels every hamlet and produces a 1,000-page report from thousands of submissions from the people. Their work is valued at a whopping 6.3 million United States dollars. 6.3. You are at the IMF looking for only $3 million, is it? But the report will not be implemented because leaders of one party, for parochial political reasons, the will of the people must fail because they are not leading the process. 11 years later, this party will begin the process afresh. But the people need crucial changes to their constitution, so they will embrace it. They fear it will fail again. But are the people from whom sovereignty, that's ultimate power in the state, spring, and which must be exercised by their leaders for their welfare, are they that powerless? Tell me what a failing democracy looks like. The president cancels a referendum because the people prepare to reject him for not respecting their desire for non-partisan local leadership. The president defies the people to appoint 126 ministers for a poor country like this. Level-head experts and even people within his own cabinet believe this country can be managed with less than 20 ministers. The president gets a needless council of state to approve his appointment of dyed-in-the-wool party fanatics onto an otherwise important independent constitutional body, the Electoral Commission. Significant CSOs, including the CODEO and CDD, call for a reversal of the appointment that damages the trust in the critical public body. Nothing happens, and nothing will happen. The party and the people will not make it impossible for those people not to contemplate resigning. Tell me what a failing democracy looks like. The state shuts down a company for defrauding over 16,000 people of their livelihoods in excess of 1.5 billion cedis. This is after looking on, I dare say, and appearing to encourage what it later said was a legal business operation to go on for years. Many have died since the state said it was prosecuting NAM1 some 5 years ago. The guy who stole plantain because he was hungry did not get bail. The guys who flouted the COVID-19 regulations because they were hungry did not get bail. They were jailed. A host of the leadership went to a funeral of a man killed by COVID-19. Tell me how a failed democracy looks like if there's no consequence. I'll continue a part 2 of this. This is my take. It's a failing democracy that needs propping up. We'll be right back.
Government has budgeted an amount of 220 million to support the relief phase for the communities affected by the Akosombo spillage, as well as floods upstream in the Oti, Savannah, and Bono East regions. Further to the above, the following reliefs have been prioritized for implementation. To extend, Mr. Speaker, the zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to extend zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Speaker, a VAT flat rate of 5% to replace the 15% standard VAT rate on all commercial properties will be introduced to simplify administration. To address the negative externalities of plastic waste and pollution, government will review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Mr. Speaker, the Stamp Duty Act 2005, Act 689, has not been reviewed since an enactment in 2005. To realign the rates with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties. The bands subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded, while the specific rates will be reviewed. Mr. Speaker, a simplified tax return will be introduced as a means of promoting voluntary compliance as part of the modified taxation scheme for individuals in the informal sector. This approach will make it easier for taxpayers to fulfill their tax obligations to the state.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, Isiomo's authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. Now, let's get to meet our guests for this morning as they begin to dissect the budgets. And postscript on my take, I said 3 billion million we're looking for. That was a slip. 3 billion at the IMF. Occupy Ghana has done a search of only our 5 years of our money stolen and money misused from the Auditor General's report. And it shows that we could have collected 2 times what we are in IMF looking for 3 billion. What a shame. Anyway, so my guest this morning to do this discussion, George Ankoma, is lead partner, Tax and Regulatory Services, Deloitte. Theo Echampong, Dr. Theo Echampong is economist and political risk analyst. Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Dake is president, Association of Ghana Industries. AGI, Kenneth Thompson is chief executive, Dalex Finance, thought leader, business and economic matters, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Here in the studio, I have Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP in Shire, so Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. Sticker. He asked why I'm laughing, and it's a good reason he asked that, because he's not happy with me this morning. And he's a member, Finance Committee of Parliament. We will also be joined by Kofi Adams, who is MP Buem and member, Public Accounts, Defense and Interior Committees of Parliament. Now later on the mining issue that Occupy Ghana and the Media Coalition Against Galamsey is asking for a law to clearly prohibit and revoke an existing law that almost got Kakum mind to clearly prohibit. They will join us on that. And also the finance minister spoke about the conduct of public officers bill, that it will be passed into law. He spoke about it in the budget. These guys have a good, knowledge around that matter. And so they will speak to us. The Catholic Bishops' Conference have also joined the Occupy Ghana and Media Coalition Against Galamsey for a complete ban of mining in our forest reserves. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for joining Newsfile. And I'll begin by asking for your brief commentary. When we put the subtopic, asking whether the price of our ball of kenke will return to 1 cedi in 1 trillion economy, which is being celebrated as historic, we use that to look at the entire budget. What does it mean to be celebrating a 1 trillion economy that is projected? So that's my first question to all of you, my guests. Brief comments about that as you use that to do a quick review of the budget, and then we'll come to the specific issues of the impact of the tax reliefs, the impact of the new taxes on the economy, and what you think of also of the relief and other matters. So let me begin with Mr. Ken Thompson. Thank you very much for making time to join us, sir.
Samson, good morning. How are you?
Doing well by grace. Thanks for asking.
I can see you're in full flow this morning.
Yes, I am.
It's good to have some passion on the show, and thank you. Well done for keeping up the passion levels all these years.
Thank you, sir. So what does it mean to be celebrating a 1 trillion economy? What does it mean to us? What's your review quick of the budget?
Okay, I think I have some 5 minutes. Well, you see, Ghanaian budgets flatter to deceive. Ghanaian budgets over the years flatter to deceive. So before the budget is read, there's some showboating. Everybody's sort of apprehensive, looking for what's coming into the budget. The day of the budget, the Minister of Finance, whichever color is from, comes with some bag, shows it to us. The budget, and your emotions are heightened. Your hormones, emotions are heightened. And then the budget is ready, you think, what happened? Let me tell you a story. I have a story to tell you, Samson, this morning. About 3 years ago, a very good friend of mine, it's called Fred. Fred came to me. I mean, he's a man who's done well in business, sharp-suited, small family, nice house in Cantonment. And he said, Ken, I'm in trouble. And I said, but Samson, what's the problem? I mean, Fred, what's the problem? Fred was in tears, absolute tears. And he says, I've done some business. I've not been paid. I'm behind on my mortgage. I'm behind on my children's school fees. They have been thrown out of school. And you know me, this can happen to me. I mean, turn up in this Mercedes. So I said, okay, no problem. I'll give you $15,000. And that's all I have because I'm saving to put a deposit on a car. So you can have the $15,000 back. Charlie Fred, this money you have to bring back as soon as possible. So I gave Fred the $15,000. I didn't hear much from him. I called him. I didn't hear much from him. And then about 6 months later, I was going to London. And, of course, I'm traveling economy. As I check in, I go through checking immigration, I get on the plane. And as I'm walking through the plane, I see somebody and I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? But I continue walking and then I came back and I said, Chief, what are you doing in business class? He says, oh, you know me, I can't, sit economy. People will think, they'll start to say certain things about me, my status society. And he had his 7-year-old son by him. So I go, as usual, go and sit down. And for those that know me, I'm 6'4", I'm huge. And as I'm sitting, fitting my way into economy, the seats, they put me in the middle. And the guy on my right is snoring and falling over me. They bring the food trolley. And the woman says, chicken or fish? And I said, oh, fish. And they said, well, fish is finished. And they threw the chicken at me. I'm thinking, wow. And then that is what it hits me. I felt cheated, used, and I thought that what Fred had done was immoral. And that is exactly how I feel about the Ghana government. I feel cheated, I feel used, and I find that what they have done is immoral. Think about it. The government of Ghana came to us and said that, we're unable to pay our debts. So we're going to, there's going to be some debt exchange program where literally the money is gone. The money is gone. I have friends who are doing projects that they've had to cancel. And then the same, I'm suffering. I have the one I'm talking about, his children he has had to change his children's school. He sold his house. And then I have a budget where all the budget is about the government and what they want to do. That's the same Fred in business class. I feel cheated. I feel it's immoral. I feel used. What is it there? What is in there for the common man? What's in there for the watch seller? What's there for the kinky seller? What's there for the mechanic? Meanwhile, cost of living is high, and there are no jobs. Economic prosperity is not about numbers. Economic prosperity is not about GDP. It's not about the size of your economy, whether you're 2 trillion, 4 trillion. It's not whether, you have 10. No. Economic prosperity is about the value of the cedi in your pocket. And as we sit now, the value of the cedi in your pocket is gone. Meanwhile, the government has made no sacrifices. We have made all those sacrifices. Why? Job for the boys. They're still doing job for the boys. Planting for food and jobs is failed. They're still putting money there. So what are we getting? Cost of living is high. Cost of doing business is high. Interest rates are high. Our capitals have been eroded through the currency depreciation. So what have we got out of it? It's immoral. I feel cheated and I feel used. That's my comment on the budget.
I want you to watch this small clip, 1 minute, that was done by one of the researchers for this program, Kofi. All right, apologies about that. That file is being prepared. So the finance minister said, quote, I want to stress that Ghana has paid its dues, has turned the corner and getting back on track. I'd like to find out from my next guest, is that a good summary, a reflection of where we are now in your review of this budget? Dr. Theo Champo.
And very passionate responses this morning. Let me start off with the 1 trillion economy, and then I'll come to the turning the corner.
That's right.
Uncle Ken was saying, look, these numbers for me is just grandstanding. 1 trillion is a meaningless metric. It doesn't mean anything, right? And especially when you've got inflation that is still in excess of 30 or so percent. 1 trillion cedis, if you convert it into USD, is just about 83 billion. The current economy is worth about 79 or so billion. So if you do the adjustment going forward with all of the growth rates, you are going to get there anyway. So whether or not you're going to get 1 trillion economy or not, it's practically meaningless in the grand scheme of things. What rather the finance minister should be talking about is other better indicators of where we are coming from and where we're going. So things like your gross national income or per capita or other growth rate that better reflect the macroeconomic situation of the country and better reflect our lived economic prosperity. Because at the end of the day, it's about the man on the street, like you were saying, the watch seller or the cocoa seller, and those people are the ones that this budget is got to work for. So when we throw figures like that about, I get worried because at the end of the day, again, it's more of political grandstanding and it doesn't really add anything as much to our economic debate. Now, the question...
When we do, if we do get to this 1 trillion, and I'm being reminded by guys like Kweku Nchibwesiako that this is mediocrity and we shouldn't even be celebrating it. He says this is a joke. Apple, Amazon, and several companies are worth 1 trillion. What's there to celebrate when one company in the US is worth more than 11 times the economy of Ghana? This political economic analysis is embarrassing. Let's stop it. So my question is, supposing we get there, and it is historic, it will be historic, as the finance minister says, and this would have been achieved and to the credit of President Akufo-Addo. Wouldn't that mean that yesterday my watch that I sent my clerk to buy, the same amount I buy all the time, and after taking it, I wasn't too sure if he had bought, a quarter less than what I had paid for? Wouldn't that reflect? Will my kenke not be 1 cedi anymore? Won't it get back there? Will the bread not get back to when I used to buy, I could buy 1 cedi bread?
No, it won't. And this is really the crux of the argument that myself and others have been making, that there's a distinction between the GDP numbers and things like inflation, cost of living, and all those things. Of course, there's some relationship between them, or one sort of, you may say, causes the other. But at the end of the day, GDP is practically a meaningless metric. It's really about your lived experience. And that's why I think that sometimes even our market women and the people on the streets, understand economics even better than some of our people that have, been to school. Because, you've got to translate these metrics into economic prosperity, into lived experiences, into bringing down your exchange rate, into getting a lower cost of borrowing, such that if I go to the bank or the market woman goes to the bank, they'll be able to get credit and be able to expand their business. And when that expansion happens, then of course you begin to see that reflect in the GDP. Even that 1 trillion, ask yourself, what proportion of the Ghanaian economy is even controlled and owned by Ghanaians? So even if we did 10 trillion for argument's sake, or 100 trillion for argument's sake, and you still have all these big capital flight, money moving out and all of that, we will still be celebrating numbers that don't mean anything whatsoever to the ordinary Ghanaian on the street. And I think it's important that we are able to situate these things in the right context rather than just throwing numbers about
Thank you.
that
Thank you very much. So I'm going around the table quickly, and we'll return to deal with to have Ken, because Ken has to leave us as quickly as possible. You wanted to say something important? Please, let's hear.
Yeah, I was going to just give a quick summary on the budget.
Please go ahead.
There
go
are
ahead.
Positives and some negatives. So the first positive on the budget is that, of course, we have begun to see some of the gains from the IMF program and the debt restructuring being reflected in some of the numbers. So you look at the fiscal balances and the numbers that were provided from January to August, and you can see that the revenue numbers came down a little bit by about 3 billion, but at the same time, we've made about 17 billion of expenditure savings in that regard. And then there's also things like the new taxes that are coming in, things like supporting the local manufacturing of electric vehicles and things, related matters that are all positive, including the Akosombo Dam spillage money. But there are issues also as well. And I think one of the core things for me really is this structural transformation argument. In fact, when you look at the numbers, right, between 2013 to 2022, and if you look at our 2013 to 2016, agriculture has actually declined by 2 percentage points of GDP relative to the number from 2017 to 2022. Industry has gone down by also another 2.1 percentage point of GDP, and then services has gone up by about 4%. So you begin to ask yourself, the government says that we've done all these interventions, planting for food and jobs, one district, one factory, and a host of other initiatives. How come that relative to the numbers from 2012, 2013, 14, 15, if you work out the averages, we are still seeing a decline in agriculture, and we're still seeing a decline in industry. So again, it tells you that there are issues with cost of doing business. The taxes are killing businesses. People are struggling. And here we are talking about a phantom 1 trillion Ghana cedi economy that is not being reflected in terms of the people's pocket or even in terms of doing business in the country.
Let's go to hear what our next guest also has to say by way of summary of his impressions of the budget, which is seeking to give us a 1 trillion economy. And I'm inviting George Ankama, lead partner, tax and regulatory services, Deloitte. But George, listen to this little summary picked out from the budget. Yes, George, let's hear you.
Right. Thank you, Samson. I really can hear you.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. So my take on this 1 trillion economy and the turning around the economy. I would say that, yes, ordinarily, to have a 1 trillion economy, or in other words, to have a bigger economy is good for every economy or every country. And for that reason, ordinarily, yes, it's a very good thing. However, we need to look at what is in it for businesses, what is in it for individuals. And I'll take that from the perspective of exchange rates. We have 1 trillion economy, but when the businessman invests money, what does that mean for the individual or the businessman? I have had interactions with some businessmen who invested somewhere 2014, 2015. If you are doing a trading business, you need to invest $1 million. And once you invest that money, it's expected that it's converted into Ghana cedis. If you ask that businessman today, the capital that was invested is virtually gone off. And so we will have a big economy, 1 trillion, which is good, but we need to work on our exchange rate. I think that the minister did mention the fact that, yes, we expect exchange rate to be very stable, and we just hope that that will be the case. Because without that, I think that we are going to have a very serious issue when it comes to investing within the economy. Inflation is also one area that we need to work on, and I think the two works together. Inflation and exchange rates works together. Something our inflation, the minister did mention some waivers in terms of the agri sector. There more taxes later on. But I think that our economy has not coming down, and that for me is a worrying one for us. And so the mode of thinking that you are talking about, if we are still importing so much food, and the currency is not doing well, how do we then get compensation for the reduction in the prices that we are talking about? That, for me, is a worry, and that we need to be looking at. So yes, the economy can't be big, but there is the need for it to reflect in the pockets of the ordinary Ghanaian. Some of the incentives, the waivers that have been given or proposed in the budget, yes, would have some reflections once they are passed into law. But I believe that if you look at it also from industry side, industry was looking for a bit more than what was given. Given what has happened during COVID period and all that, and how that has impacted businesses, industry was looking for more than just what the kind of waivers that are given. There are some taxes that industry has been worried about that is really affecting the cost of doing business in Ghana. And this is one of the things, or few other things that industry has been asking for. For instance, COVID levy. There has been so many discussions around the COVID levy and the need for that to be dropped because COVID levy was actually introduced for a purpose, and it impacts the cost of doing business and cost of every activity that you do. So COVID, as we all know, the World Health Organization that declared COVID as pandemic says it's no longer a pandemic, and so we expected that even if COVID levy is not going to be mentioned as immediately withdrawn, some timelines given as to when COVID levy is going to go down, so that it will be able to affect the cost of doing business in Ghana. Business sector also was expecting some measures around, for instance, consolidation of the VAT and the levies. Something I tell you, the levies inclusive of the COVID 6% is significant on the cost of doing business in Ghana, because these are costs that are not recoverable in line with the input-output approach by businesses, and so it affects the bottom line. And at the end of the day, to have the impact on the ordinary citizen, the businessman also needs to make profits. And for that reason, the 6% that is hitting the businesses, industry was expecting that would have been looked into, because a lot of conversation have gone on, said that it is converted or consolidated into the standard VAT regime, so that it becomes an input-output for businesses. And I believe that will automatically even bring down the cost of products in the economy.
Dr. Ofori-Atta, president of the AGI, the finance minister said, quote, "I can confidently," let me begin from where he started. Mr. Speaker, we have worked hard and invested significant resources, and being sure of this knowledge, I can confidently assert, sounded like Bible language, and being sure of this knowledge, I can confidently assert that over the past 7 years. Now, Doc, this is in bold, italicized, nicely presented. Every sector, you are in business. Every sector, you are dealing with all sorts of sectors in your interaction. Every sector has been positively impacted. Every household has been positively impacted by our social intervention programs, and every region has been positively impacted towards a 6 billion economy. What do you say? 1 trillion economy. What do you say? Dr. Ofori-Atta, please unmute your mic.
Mic?
Yes, go on. We can hear you now.
All right, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity, Samson. Well, per the budget, our opinion is that it comes with optimism per the letter of the budget as expressed by Senior Thompson. in a way. However, we also acknowledge that the optimism should be characterized with caution and also measured expectation within the context of a country coming out of a recovery position. Anytime we do this engagement, I try to draw the attention that we're still in the woods. We are not yet out of the woods, and therefore the analysis should still be contextualized. We still have governance issues, and we have liquidity challenges and debt positions. So within the said context, it comes with optimism, but characterized with measured expectation, as so stated. However, in the midst of that, we see a number of positives that has arisen within the period in discussion, i.e. the macro gains and the role of the IMF restoring confidence to some extent by virtue of those gains to the business community. And secondly, we also appreciate the number of interventions regarding some tax reliefs to some sectors. You could realize that the reliefs that were released are not across board. So to those sectors, we did make some case in consultations with the minister, and therefore we acknowledge those gains. Secondly, we seek to say that some of the reliefs should be aligned, because the principle behind the tax reliefs for, say, the part companies was to make sure that this concept of value addition and this concept of substitution, industrializing substitution, should be cut across most of the sectors where we have comparative advantages to stimulate growth. So we acknowledge the role of the part institutions. Nonetheless, when we go to, and we also acknowledge that of the agriculture space, where government seeks to give a lot of reliefs in terms of tax waivers on the machineries that are coming in. But as you do that, our prayer is that government will align and make sure that institutions that are in the country that are already producing some agricultural tools and equipment will be exempted from these reliefs of importation.
So we will come to the tax reliefs and exemptions specific. We wanted your first impressions of the budget, and you are talking about hope and measured expectation.
That's correct. Hope and measured expectations within the context of the general economic difficulties, and try to reshape and bring confidence in the economy for businesses to operate.
All right, thank you very much. So I come to the studio now, and it's going to be as quick as you have heard my guest on Zoom speak to, and then I'll go to Kem. It's going to be as quick, and I can assure you, if you do beyond 5 minutes, I'll cut you. Now, we want your summary of what you find the budget to be, and I see Kofi Adams trying to read some portion. In my take, I suggested to you that the MPs were there just shouting and not listening. I doubt they read what was going on. Let's test it with Kofi Adams. Yes, Kofi Adams, what is your summary of this budget?
Well, Samson, thank you for the opportunity.
Your summary review.
What usually happens is that the finance minister only presents a speech. He doesn't give you the full budget.
That's understood.
Truly, in a budget, it is the indices that provides you the meat. As for the speech, it is what people will say economic propaganda sometimes. So you will not get much from it. So it is the noise that you hear. It is when members see the propaganda component of the speech, where you title successes that are not there, or successes that can clearly be seen that this should not even be celebrated in any way. That is where sometimes you hear the noise. And then, of course, you would receive counter from the other side, thinking that they should be praising it. But
I suppose, for example, you don't have an assistant to yourself who you would have instructed to pay attention to specific areas where you have some expertise and would have broken down some aspect for which you should follow up or, help you to debate the budgets?
Well, they do. We have them, they do. But the truth of the matter is that Parliament is structured in committees. And because it's structured in committees, usually you have the debate also structured into components. And so, like on Tuesday, when we start the debate, there will be a seconder and then a ranking of finance committee. They will look at the economic and then the financial areas. You have the social services. You have the security sector, where some of us are on defense and interior committee, where maybe we'll be expected to make interventions.
Right. So what's your general view of the budget?
The general view is that this is not a budget that you can clearly tell me that we have turned a corner or we will be able to achieve any success. The businesses cannot smile. You and I will not feel any change in our pockets because it all boils down to what you feel in your pocket. That is what the budget should be analyzed. At the end of the day, all the figures that are thrown out there, all the indicators that are given, how do you feel it in your pocket? Like other colleagues have said, the minister wants us to celebrate that we are hitting 1.037 trillion next year. But what is your real growth that is taking you there? You are reporting to us that you are doing 2.3. And if you are doing 2.3 over an 850 billion economy, how are you achieving that 1,037 GDP that he's talking about? You are achieving that on the level of what? Inflation. Samson, if I have this pen and it is 1,000 cedi, and as a result of inflation, the value of this pen has moved to say 1,200. It still remains just 1 pen. I haven't added anything to the pen. So you look at that sum and announce as if you have grown, when actually you have not grown. It is as a result of the poor management of the economy and the rise in inflation, you are reporting as if you have done that well. So I don't see any hope in this budget. I don't see how we have turned the corner. There are a lot of new taxes in there. You can't tell me, for example, Samson, that you say, oh, you have reduced VAT. I've heard some say so. I haven't seen it in the budget. What I have seen is rather an attempt to actually increase it. Because by introducing a flat rate of 5%, Samson, what is going to be happening is that in the past, it was like a consumption tax. So the final consumer is the one that pays the VAT. Now you are introducing 5% and slapping it on everybody. So me, at the production point, first point, I have to put 5% on it, and it becomes part of the cost. So the value that I'm going to sell to sticker will go up by that. He now also puts another 5% on it. And by the time you finally consume, you will be paying my 5% you will pay, his 5% you will pay, and your 5% you will pay. So you cannot be telling me that you are reducing when you are going to even be getting more. So there's a lot of perception.
As we have clearly indicated, we'll go to the taxes, the reliefs, and the new taxes shortly. But Steve, it definitely means something. As he says, the minister says, that Ghana's economy under President Akufo-Addo's final year in office is projected to be valued over 1 trillion in 2024 from the 219.5 billion in 2026. This is progress you want all of us to celebrate across the board. And I intentionally went to everybody before I come to you because you are in government and you are also an expert in financial matters. You don't have anybody agreeing with you that this is something anybody should be celebrating.
Okay, my regards to my co-panelists, that is including those online or Zoom, and then my regards to the entire country, especially the good people of Insheso constituency, who gave me the mandate to be here this very morning. Samson, I'll use my 30 seconds to say that if we all mean well for Ghana, honesty is very key. If we all of us, all stakeholders, if we all mean well for Ghana, we are not perfect, yes. Honesty in exercising our stewardship, especially some of us that God has blessed us to have knowledge in certain areas. Let us all be very careful. We don't do things that in the long term, our children will come to suffer. If I hear people who do not have expertise in these areas, and they are making a lot of comments, sometimes I'm saying that's fine. Myself is not everything that I know. A lot of people know more than I do. But sometimes we talk as if we have underlying interests, and as a result, we don't want to say things as is. Depending on who is in government, depending on whose interest as individuals. Something. It's just projection, setting goals. That alone is an issue. To the extent that somebody can say that
it's for the fun of it.
Oh, projections are fun of it?
Is it for the fun of it?
Not the fun of it. You said projection for the fun of it?
It's a question, please.
I'm surprised you're also asking me this. It's just projection. Projection means you are here today.
I mean, it's not just. It's not for the fun of it.
No, because people are talking as if it's something he said has happened. What I'm saying is that projection means you are here. You can project that next year you build 10 houses based on measures you are putting in place. It could be beyond that.
We are discussing the projection. We are not discussing that it has been achieved.
Thank you. It could be more than that. It could be below. It could be the same. But the good thing is that we look at our numbers over the years, what is happening today, and what is actually being done by the government to say that we are projecting X amount next year. If you look at 2016, the percentage increase is over 300%. And somebody will say that is nothing. Somebody will say even an individual's money in America. How can you compare these two economies and what happens in terms of what they do? First, you ask 1 trillion. What it means is that the market value for goods and services that will be produced in the year, that year, the market value of goods and services that will be produced in this country, in that particular year, which is next year. And the most important thing we are all looking at today is that these numbers to me are very important. The only thing that I agree is the translation of these numbers in impacting lives. But you can't say it's not good. All the other areas, some of my colleagues are talking about, are they not statistical figures? Are they not numbers? How did we arrive at them? Then you say others are not important, or we don't even have to talk about them. We only have to select these areas. Sometimes we need to understand the whole thing. This year's budget, just like any other country, the playing field or the concentration is on the fiscal space, whether you like it or not. Because 2022 up to now, look at the world. The world's debt to GDP was about 258. In fact, 2022, we had over 80% GDP. So debt to GDP. Now it's about 66.4. So any government that knows what it's doing will concentrate on mechanization of fiscal space to consolidate it by mechanizing a very good equilibrium between revenue we are generating internally and then how we can control cost, and then managing our borrowing in a way that will not jeopardize this economy. At the same time, thinking about manufacturing, because agriculture grew 6.3, which is even higher than about 6.2 2017. Services grew, but manufacturing grew negative. So the government, looking at the aspect of manufacturing, decided to give some leverage in a way of reducing some of the tax components in the area of manufacturing so that we can produce more in our country, create the needed value chains, and employ a lot of people. So if you look at this budget, in my opinion, it's one of the best. You cannot say, everything has been handled very well. But let me tell you, the projection by this government, by the finance minister, that Ghana is going to grow about 1 trillion. It's something all of us must laud it, support the government as stakeholders, and make sure that we are able to attain that. There wouldn't be any uncertainties that will impair this projection in terms of its reality or realization. Aside that, we need to also understand the fact that there has been restoration, just as we stated in 2023 budget. All the primary macro indicators, or most of them, are showing signs of this government doing well to bring this economy back to track. And that's why the minister said we are at the corner. Because inflation is now down to about 33, we are projecting about 15. Even GDP we're talking about, the global GDP, it's about 1 point something, less than 2, the projection for next year. Ours is 2.8. So you look at all these things, the indication is that although there are challenges, although there are difficulties, although I agree with some of the things my co-panels or discussants have raised, the government in managing the economy and consolidating our fiscal space to ensure that we restore and stabilize and move forward, we are in the right direction. So let us discuss. When somebody says its impact on the people, go and check GEA, Ghana Enterprise Agency, and the NAPE. In terms of micro impact on the lives of people, monies they're giving out to support people and even the education and the space we are creating for even the individual private sector to thrive and move on. Okay. So we all have to always do politics, and we recycle some of these challenges depending who is in government. We do to NDC, NDC will do to MPP, other discussants based on their interests.
I'll advise that it is not the best to suggest and impugn that our guests who have spoken so far are not being honest.
I never said that.
That's how you began.
No, I never said that.
You began by questioning the credibility of what
can I say that again?
have said.
No, can I say that again?
Okay.
What I said is, in this country, let us allow honesty to prevail. That does not suggest that those who spoke now, we are talking about Ghana.
Yeah, you said that, and said when I hear them say that.
No, they are not the only.
You are not referring to the people for this.
I'm referring to everyone who has gotten opportunity to speak on issues concerning Ghana.
All right, thank you. Now,
it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Now let's go to Ken Thompson, and we're going to look at some specifics as we have tried to, project for you. But to start, Kofi Bentil says that he'll be joining us for the last leg of this discussion. He says, touting a 1 trillion economy is equal to having a liter of oil and pouring 4 liters of water into it and saying you have 5 liters of oil. Whoever pushes that narrative is dishonest and disrespectful of the listeners.
I think he's done it better.
Musa Abatua says that Samson, the person of Kenneth Thompson, is the type we want in this country. He is honest and passionate about the suffering masses. The 2024 budget has failed to address the fundamental issues relative to living standards of Ghanaians. 1 trillion economy won't address the economic quagmire. They should cut the expenditure further, boost production, and increase export commodities. I didn't know that you have some economics, training. Thank you for sharing that. And then Dr. Boateng says that Ghana worth 1 trillion in nominal terms is meaningless in economics. That statement appears to show that the managers of the economy do not understand basic macroeconomics. We teach how meaningless nominal GDP in nominal terms in Introduction to Economics. We should know better. Then, final message I read is from Henry in Ofori-Atta. He says, today, Sticker is defending projection. Some few years ago, Sticker was vehemently against projection.
Oh, how?
Hey, nipa ye cobra mpa. Politicians must be principled and respect the feelings of the ordinary Ghanaians that voted for them. To be sincere, the slogan "we are moving from taxation to production" has now turned to more taxation, less or more production. This budget has no hope for the unemployed youth and business associates. The future is pregnant. Thanks for those messages. Now, let me go to Ken Thompson, but let's hear what Ken Ofori-Atta had to say about the tax reliefs.
Further to the above, the following reliefs have been prioritized for implementation. To extend, Mr. Speaker, the zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to extend zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Speaker, a VAT flat rate of 5% to replace the 15% standard VAT rate on all commercial properties will be introduced to simplify administration. To address the negative externalities of plastic waste and pollution, government review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Mr. Speaker, 2005 Act 689 has not been reviewed since an enactment in 2005. To realign the rate with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties. The bands subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded, while the specific rates will be reviewed. Mr. Speaker, a simplified tax return will be introduced as a means of promoting voluntary compliance as part of the modified taxation scheme for individuals in the informal sector. This approach will make it easier for taxpayers to fulfill their tax obligations to the state.
Right. So, sir, the tax reliefs, and there are also tax increases that have happened, quite, a raft of them. How do they impact on the economic recovery that we so want to achieve, being in IMF and seeking these drops of millions of cedis coming in from time to time to prop up the economy?
Samson, first, I want to knock something on its head, and I'll say it again and again. Economic prosperity is not about numbers. It's about the value of the cedi in your pocket. Full stop. And politicians should stop lying to us about debt to GDP ratio. It's not about how much your debt to GDP ratio is. It's how much of your income you are used to pay that debt. Don't compare yourself to Japan, which has over 200% debt to GDP ratio. The amount they pay for their debt is less than 20%. What are we talking about? Anyway, with regards to tax, first, the tax is a red herring. And I'd like to shift a little bit tax and agriculture, because, of course, when you give tax reliefs, you are supposed to help to revive an economy. Apart from the fact that planting for food and jobs have failed, it has failed. I mean, there are people in this country that are going hungry. Food inflation is gone through the roof. Instead of measuring outcomes, we talk about how many farmers have been helped, how many people have received implements. We don't measure outcomes. We're still importing tons and tons of broilers, and we're exporting tons and tons of eggs and rice.
The poultry industry you're talking about is literally dead in this country. We have engaged those in that industry, and we don't import. We don't produce even up to 2% of what we consume.
So I'll come to that. And what we do. But if you look in the budget, they've also put in some scheme to do some poultry outgrower scheme and so forth. It's going to fail like the ones that failed in 2014, 2016, 2017. It will fail, and it's just job for the boys and opportunity for politicians to take money out. And I feel cheated. I feel cheated. There's when you think about the poultry industry, I mean, it's not about the birds. It's about the efficiency of all the people that support that industry. It's about the price of feed. What are we doing about maize? Let's talk about those things. Where's the integration with Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Transport? Where's the integration with FDA? There are issues to do with dumping. Has the Ministry of Food and Agriculture talked to the Ministry of Trade? What have they done about it? So I feel cheated. It's immoral. Money's being taken out of my pocket.
I don't intend to interrupt you, but when you talk about the poultry industry, with my engagement with those of them who are in there, they are president and leaders on this show, and realizing, for example, how that industry is completely dying out, they, at a point, they had solace in the 1 egg per day for the school child. And then suddenly, somebody felt that a contract should be given to some person to go and bring something prepared in China with school feeding on it. And that completely took away their jobs.
Samson, and if you think about the tons and tons and tons of money we borrow from agriculture, it's sad that we're where we are. The issue is not about the taxes. The issue is about a lack of vision. The issue is not about money. It's about policy. The issue is lack of integration. The issue is lack of strong leadership to say no. Those are the issues. So those things you talk about, taxes, those things with the politicians, they are just red herrings. I mean, so I can bring in a hatchery for tax-free. Well, fair enough. But how about all the other things that go into it? How about all that? Let's think short, medium, long term. Let's have policies and plans that make sense. We lack vision. We lack ability to plan. It's not about money. We lack strong leadership. That's the issue. And that's what we need to deal with. But if you ask me whether the taxes are beneficial, of course, I mean, what are the taxes going to do? I mean, interest rates are over 40%. When the government takes money out of my pocket, all it uses it to do to fund its pet projects and give its employees more money. Why didn't it give the money back to me? Why didn't the government use that to reduce its borrowing so I can reduce interest rates? Then I can see an effect in my pocket. But to say that, you've given me some tax relief, I mean, what do I do with it?
But business has also been complaining that if there was some sort of tax holidays or reliefs, it will help to grow the economy. And this has been done. Zero tax rate on VAT, on locally manufactured African print for 2 more years. Zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary parts. Import duty waivers for raw materials for local manufacturing of sanitary parts. Extension of zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. Waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for 8 years. Government to engage GMA on waivers for vehicle importation to ease doctors' transportation burden upon passage of the Exemptions Act. Grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery, equipment and input and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. And finally, waive import duties on knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years.
Let me take a couple. So you talk about tax exemption for electric vehicles. I mean, how many people work in that industry anyway? I mean, this is a tax for friends. Really, I mean, what are you trying to achieve? Of course, something like a tax relief on locally made wax prints and sanitary parts is good. But at the factories here, how long will it take for the factory to set up. In any case, it's not that 2 or 3 or 4% tax relief that you're giving that will incentivize the private sector to engage and invest. It's about all the other things. I mean, this, for me, there's so much showboating. There's too much showboating. And, you know, we're sort of shadow boxing. We're in the ring, but nobody's throwing a punch. We can't continue like this. There's a lack of vision, a lack of planning. I mean, the businesses are suffering. People are laying off staff. Don't we see that? Don't you realize Ghanaians are going hungry every day? What policies are we doing that will impact their lives? If the government has money, has saved some money, it shouldn't be to YA, God for the boys, it shouldn't be the poultry. The government should facilitate. The government does not execute. And that is our problem. So for me, the taxes, they are nice, but really, the impact is negligible.
How about the taxes that have also been introduced? And we're asking the question, how will the reliefs and the new taxes or the increases or review upwards of the taxes lead us to the destination, as in economic recovery? Government is to review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Government is to review the Tax Duty Act, and bans subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded while the specific rates will be reviewed upwards. The implementation of the communication service tax is being carried out in phases. The first phase, currently under implementation, covers 14 entities, including pay-per-view television stations, and finally, engagement with stakeholders for implementation of the second phase has begun, and their onboarding will be carried out in 2024.
Samson, they say, if you can't convince them, what do? Confuse them. Don't be confused. And the impact is negligible. Ask anybody. If you can't convince them, confuse them. I mean, guys, come on. Let's be real. Let's be real. How does the trader in Abosoka, how does he benefit? He's lost all his capital over the last 2 years. How does he benefit? He can't borrow to save his life. He has no chance of being able to raise more money. How does my friend, who has had to take his kids out of school because of DDEP, how does he benefit? Those taxes, you can ask those that have the figures, the effect is negligible. That is of no sure way to revive this economy. If you want to revive this economy, focus on driving the interest rates down. Focus on that. If there's any money, focus on reducing your borrowing. Then you can start to have some hope that there will be a revival. But this is showboating. If you can't convince them, confuse them. That's what I say to that.
Finally, before you take leave of us, I'm interested in finding out. You've heard, for example, John Jinapo, the NDC, say that a total of 5.5 billion in tax exemptions is being offered to cover some 47 crony companies. I know generally there's been a complaint about how our government just give tax exemptions. What do you say about that? We will ask them to establish the truth in this. But what do you say about that?
Okay, I have no way of confirming what she said. But this issue of tax exemption to favor those who are politically connected and their associates is not a new one. So it needs to be looked into. This issue of tax exemptions to favor the politically connected people, those that benefit from the state, associated with the state, and their cronies, it's not a new one. And people will tell you, your economists will tell you, they'll probably lose as much through tax waivers and exemption as is more that we are seeking from the IMF. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom. And let's deal with the issues. We're just going around in circles and circles and throwing figures about. Figures doesn't mean anything. It's the value of the cedi in my pocket.
All right. We can't thank you enough. Thank you very much. That is Kenneth Thompson, Chief Executive, Dalex Finance, thought leader, business and economics matters. He's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. And our viewers and listeners are just loving him for what they say, his blunt speaking and not allowing himself to be, as it were, confused by the figures. So let's move on to Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Dake. Because you are with the Ghana Association of Industries, AGI, and you are looking at the budget as one of hope with measured expectations. The raft of taxes, of course, they are to specific entities or sectors, but they benefit your members, and those also for increases. What do you say? Will this help us to, as it were, properly turn the corner, get to the recovery, and then achieve the projection of a 1 trillion economy?
All right. Yes, okay. Thank you, Samson. Regarding the sectors that these taxes or tax reliefs are to benefit, automatically, any company or any individual or citizen that patronize such goods will benefit from the reliefs that will be transferred to the consumer in that sector. We argued this out in recent times regarding the zero rate VAT on the diapers and then on the pads, and therefore all our citizens that will put this to use will benefit in terms of the reliefs that will come to them. So these are sectorial, and these are regarding to companies that are in these sectors. So our principle we seek to push out there or advocate on is that, given that these sectors benefit from this, can we choose a few more sectors and implement same, and also deepen the value addition and the integrated aspect of this? That is how we develop sector by sector, product by product, and then we can export this to support the economy. So respectfully, I believe that the institutions that are getting this benefit will benefit from it, and their customers will benefit from it. Nonetheless, we also want to make a case that in the case of the agriculture space, and I repeat it again, that you are giving reliefs for agriculture equipment. A company like Crocodile Matches that produces part of the agriculture tools must be isolated and exempted from such a general exemptions that is coming for the agriculture space, and then aid them to integrate into the space. So some of this policy per se is a good one, but there are companies on the local market that must be treated just as the companies in the pad industry. So we agree to the fact that these companies will benefit from these reliefs.
Tell me if this is just part of what Stephen complains about, unnecessarily being negative, when we can look at some of the positives and take them and run with them. One of the people in the poultry industry, one of the investors in that area, tells me that what Kenneth is saying is 100%. He says it is job for the boys. Go check out those behind the broiler program. What do you say?
Well, regarding the poultry intervention, it is also captured in the agriculture PFG2, and the government seeks to deploy some resources to stimulate that sector of the economy. Yes, once you stimulate that sector of the economy, there will be beneficiaries. Either they are job for the boys, or they are on the either side of the parties that play. To me, what matters when I do such engagement on behalf of my members, our members are both parties. Is the policy cross-cutting enough? Is the policy such that anybody of the other divide can take advantage of? If that is the case, as a business person, that should be your focus. And then you could deploy your lobbying tactics as a business person to be part of the interventions. So this is how I see it.
But my expectation is not that you be asking questions, that you asking whether this is cross-cutting enough. You should be telling us whether it's cross-cutting enough. Your members are impacted by these.
As the policy has been captured in the budget, that PFJ2 will have an intervention for the poultry industry. Did it separate anybody? And somebody alleges that it's for a job for the boys. Let the individual approve that. To me, what matters is that the policy is cross-cutting enough. You need to take advantage of it. If you go and you're denied, you can make a case to that effect. That is how I see the positive aspect of this intervention coming to the poultry industry.
Right.
And beyond that, you should realize that there are other related factors that are making the poultry industry go through this crisis. And that's part of the feed processing and the integrated aspect of it. How is this intervention going to solve that? That is how I look at the position.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Right, Dr. Humphrey Ayim-Dake, thank you very much for your time. The AGI, wishing you the best. Now let me get to George Ankama, who is lead partner tax and regulatory services, Deloitte. You are the experts in tax matters. So tell us, the tax waivers, the tax increases and so on, and the alleged exemption package which the minority says memoranda have been sent to them, and they have identified as many as 47 companies that will benefit from 5.5 billion in tax exemption, and these are crony companies. What's your take?
Thank you, Samson. So, Samson, until last year when we passed the tax exemptions bill into an act, exemptions were being granted here and there, and it's on record that the extent of exemptions that were given were quite significant, that it was over billions of Ghana cedis. And the need for us to then have this tax exemption to ensure that exemptions are streamlined. And so passing the Exemptions Act was to ensure that, yes, sectors that need certain exemptions, because basically why are exemptions granted? The exemptions are granted to attract investment in certain areas. So definitely you cannot discount the need for tax exemptions. But you ask yourself, where are the exemptions going? I'm not aware of which companies are being granted exemptions, but like I said, it's good if we have an exemption policy as we have and ensure that it is actually utilized for the purpose for which it was designed, and giving exemptions to sectors specific where we need to boost our economy. Because something we have become an import-dependent economy. And you see that discussion so far has been, in as much as industries, some exemptions or waivers have been granted, we still have a situation of cost of doing business being very high. Inflation very high, cost of funding very high, and for which reason it's very, very difficult for businesses to survive. I can tell you on authority that if you take industry, the manufacturing sector, more than 60% are not manufacturing. They are only packaging, and you can do a research on that. They are only doing packaging instead of manufacturing.
Okay.
Because it's become quite expensive to manufacture in Ghana. The exemptions or waivers that have been granted under this budget, hoping that it will pass into law, are good. Like I said earlier, industry was looking for more. The waiver for locally manufactured testers, which is very good. We may not get all the exemptions at a go. So for me, it's a starting point that we are starting.
But how does that work? These rafts of waivers in an austerity, how does it work?
Yes, so in as much as we are doing exemptions, we are not doing exemption for corporate income tax. We are doing exemption for indirect taxes. This will allow the cost to go down, and by that, consumption automatically goes up, given other factors within the economy.
Okay.
And once consumption is going up, you are able to do more business, you are able to make more profit, and government tends to get more profit. And that's why we say that the exemption in itself is not bad. It is how you do it and who you are giving to. Are you giving the exemptions to priority sectors? And so, for instance, the exemption to the importation of agri machinery and inputs, very important, because if you take the agri sector, we need to grow our agri sector. And so if we are having the inputs being exempted from import duties, what's happening? We are going to then have a better yield at a lower cost, and we should be able to then reduce the cost of food and other things that we talk about.
Okay.
We have always said that taxes are not only imposed for revenue generation. Taxes are also imposed to discourage certain consumption of certain products, and also to investment in certain areas. And so we always have that when we're imposing these taxes, is it to generate revenue? The environmental tax that is being expanded, that is fine to ensure that we are all craving for green economy, and so the need for us to have something that will encourage reduction in the emission within the sector. And for that reason, imposing taxes then will encourage investment into that area, and then reduce consumption of plastic waste within the economy. We talk of import duties and on semi-knockdown electric cars and parts, which is good. This exemption, yes, is good. It's a starting point, and I believe that is why it's 8 years as a waiver that is being, because you do not expect this to happen within the next 2-3 years. If you look at the economy in which we are, where is the electric cars that we have on the economy, and so how much are we going to generate from that sector?
That's the question, really. Is this an economy that is expecting electric vehicles within the next 8 years?
Well, something. So we are part of the global economy, and things are changing faster than we expect. And so, for me,
is this not negligible?
Okay, something. We may be the first country within the SAARC region to actually have an incentive within the sector, which could attract investment into the sector in Ghana. And then once more cars are manufactured in Ghana, other countries, we can export to other countries. And we are looking at our currency as we have been discussing. So generally, I would say that, yes, some incentives have been given, but we need to look at how does the ordinary person benefit from those incentives. The exemption
bottom line
on the sanitary parts.
Bottom line. Thank you very much, George Ankuma. George Ankuma is lead partner, tax and regulatory services, Deloitte. Right now, the only person we have still joining us virtually is Dr. Theo Champong. And Dr. Theo Champong will be the last person to also share his views on the tax waivers and tax increases and their impact on our journey to economic recovery and to the projection of 1 trillion economy. When he's done, we'll resume to the studio, and then we'll have Kofi Bentil and Kenneth Ashigbe join us for the final leg. But these guys here in the studio will help us with the budget issues that they have commented already on, and Kofi Adams too is in a meeting and has to leave. Yes, let's hear you, Dr. Theo Champong.
Yes, so I just want to pick a few of the points, starting with one that my good friend Sticker made about the 1 trillion being quote unquote, according to him, a mere projection. So my question to him, and I suppose to all of us, really is, if it is just a mere projection, then why is the finance minister touting it as an achievement, and for that matter, something that we should be celebrating?
It's not just an achievement. The finance minister calls it historic.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So if that were the case, then you begin to see, for me again, the issue that Ken talks about a lot of showboating, a lot of grandstanding, a lot of rhetoric, and is actually not backed by the substance that is needed or the deep-seated connections between the policies and the policy outcomes. And it goes to the second point before the tax on
opinion.
even the choice of the choice
please
of
go on. Please go on.
indicators. The choice of indicators that we use in some of these conversations, they're very, very important. If you look at, for example, the economy conversation and you take industry, take agri, take services, right? Relative to 2017, you could argue that there has been some 1 or 2 improvement. Even that in some years is up, in some years it's down. But if you do a much more historical analysis and you go back, say, over even 10 years or 14 years, you begin to see that gradually or consistently, agriculture's share of GDP, manufacturing share of GDP, it's actually been coming down, right? And this is us consistently saying, we're giving a lot of interventions, we're giving a lot of support, we're giving a lot of tax rebate, you name it in there. But at an outcome level, which is really the important thing, not the inputs and not, the things that we claim to be giving, it is not being borne out at that evidence-based level. So you see that there's some issues there in terms of the policy sequencing and the policy interventions that we tend to make. And that goes into the issue also at the micro level. So we keep talking GDP, we'll keep talking, debt and all of that. But the watcher seller on the street, as I like to use as my frame of reference, is still having to deal with the high cost of living. They go and buy beans, and the cost of beans is going up. But at the same time, we're saying that we've got planting for food and jobs and all these other interventions in that space. So there are some positives, don't get me wrong. In the 2024 budget, especially on the tax policy side, there are things there that I think are useful and actually would help us in terms of the recovery going forward. Some of the ones around like the electric vehicle. And you asked the question, how many EVs, for example, do we have in the country? And if you look at the recent statistics, we're actually talking about 17,000 or so electric vehicles in the country, and there's potential for growth. But the potential is especially more on the manufacturing of the battery components and the precursor cells that you need, right, to create an industrial hub, an industrial ecosystem.
Right.
So to the extent that you're giving some tax rebate and things like that to support that is positive and that's welcome.
Okay.
But that needs to go hand in hand with addressing the other constraints that businesses face, such as access to credit, such as the exchange rate in that matter. Okay. And I'm particularly also happy, just quickly, on the environmental taxes that are being proposed. I happen to be one of the consultants that actually worked a bit on this particular policy intervention. And you can see why that would, again, help reduce the waste pollution and at the same time support on the revenue side. And then, the sanitary parts and all of that, again, is welcome. Medical consumables, all of those things are welcome. But all these things, at the end of the day, must be reflected in the outcome level indicators. And to the extent that those things are not happening, then we have an issue.
All right. Thank you very much for our guest who joined us by Zoom. We'll take a quick break and we'll return with a focus on our guest in the studio. And then later, they will do into 30 minutes and then they'll leave us because they have important programs to attend to. And then we shall have Kenneth Ashigbe and Kofi Bentil join us on the matter of prohibition of mining in forest reserves and the promise of the anti-corruption bill to be passed in the budget that Ken Ofori-Atta read to us. Those who have been listening to, George Ankoma, Lead Partner, Tax and Regulatory Services, Deloitte, Dr. Theo Champong, Economist and Political Risk Analyst, Dr. Humphrey Anyim Dake, President, Association of Ghana Industries, Kenneth Thompson is Chief Executive, Dalex Finance, and he's a thought leader. He's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. In the studio, Dr. Stephen Amoah, MP in Shai, so a Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. Kofi Adams is MP Buem, and member Public Accounts and Defense Interior Committees. We'll be right back.
Mr. Speaker, this government is leaving behind a budget that is debt-riddled. It's leaving behind an economy that is overtaxed. You are leaving behind an economy that is seeing hyperinflation. You are leaving behind an economy that is seeing high food inflation. And you are leaving behind an economy that is seeing high monetary policy rate. As if that is not enough, Mr. Speaker, this government is leaving behind an economy with high lending rate. You are again leaving behind an economy with high unemployment rate. Mr. Speaker, as if again that is not enough, you are leaving behind a misery index that has never been witnessed in this fourth republic. In fact, you are leaving behind a misery economy. In other words, a witch rate economy. Mr. Speaker, to conclude on this matter, let me say that they are also leaving behind an economy where we are seeing massive and uncontrolled corruption according to the country's Bishop Conference. Mr. Speaker, this is the scorecard of this government. This is the legacy they are leaving behind. And so most importantly, I'm not surprised that today, you are here reading the budget alone. Where is the governor of the Bank of Ghana? Nowhere. Where is the vice president? Nowhere. But let me say, they cannot abandon you. You did this with them. And so they are the faces of destruction, and you are part of it. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Mr. Minister. Bye-bye, MPP. Then this is your scorecard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. That the figures cannot be toyed with. Dr. Atto-Forson, let me remind you that your government could not implement a single landing beach project. You came into this house with a law. You chickened out and you came to do capping. This government has successfully heard the cries of the fishermen, and we have constructed 12 landing beach sites. You come from the central region. You've not been able to do that for the people of central region. And you are telling him that he has underperformed. Hey, Dr. Forson. Hey, Atto. Are you saying that you as a deputy finance minister, you did better than Ofori-Atta? Is that what you are saying? Mr. Speaker, is the same NDC with its old men. They have no more card to play. They played their only joker on the scorecard. And today, you tell us that this economy is in its worst state. It was worse. With all that we've experienced under COVID, with all that we've experienced on the global space, we have managed to keep the light on. We inherited doomso under you. We inherited a situation where children could not go to secondary schools. And Mr. Speaker, we are ready for you today, tomorrow, any other day. Mr. Speaker, I thank you so much.
All right, so you heard Kaisel Atto-Forson, the minority leader, and then also the deputy majority leader, Afenyo King. Sharon Abuaji says, so if we import EV for Trotro at 0% tax, where and how do we charge them? Would our failing electricity supply system power the cars, or government intends to build solar charging stations at the various structural stations. Excellence Reign says this budget they brought is to give Ghanaians false hope and empty promises. Vine Maxwell says the growth the MPP government is starting is inflation-induced. This budget should be renamed Mean to Me. We will be worse off at the end of this budget. The budget is called Nkunim budget, and you say we should call it Mean to Me budget. Peter Doe Jr. says a government that went begging IMF for 3 billion is granting over 5 billion. 3 billion what? It's not CDs, correct? 5 billion tax waiver to crony companies. If this isn't corruption and thievery, what is it? K. Amofa says COVID did hit Ghana in 2020. How come Ghana government woke up to decide on increasing local production of tomato and onions? And lastly, Man Friday, is it? Says Ghana's economy can best be described as alcoholic. He blames everyone like Russia, Ukraine, Israel war, COVID, but himself. He forgets his state and talks big like electric cars. Meanwhile, the road, stable energy is a problem. He's so poor, yet talks about winning elections. Yes, Stephen. Yeah. The taxes. How do they, get us to debt recovery and to a projection of 1 trillion economy?
Okay, thank you very much. But before then, I think quickly I need to get this thing addressed. Not in the history of this country have I ever fought projections. I think we are developing something in our society that people just bring anything they want to deceive other people and blame other people for not doing it. I've never ever. 2, I never said a mere projection. The word mere is different from just. My emphasis was on the fact that it is a projection we are working towards, and believing our data and what we've done, what we are doing, measures put in place, we will get there. And that's what the minister said is one of the greatest achievements, so like policy statement or projections we've made. So I never said mere as if I'm trivializing it.
But in Ghana, sometimes when we want to say mere, we say just.
But they are not the same. So I want to correct that.
You say it's just a projection.
And please, the issue about agric and industry have been coming down. Let's be very honest. 4 years down the line to 2016, we had continuously power outage for about 4 years. And if you are talking about major elements or ingredients of building and sustaining industries and the agricultural sector in terms of the entire value chain, you can't take away energy. We were even growing as a country, averagely 7%. For 3 years, till this COVID and other things came that we started having impaired productivity and the co-minimis that affected our fiscal space. That is now leading us to this controversial taxes, either we should increase or decrease. So Samson, coming back to the taxes, you enumerated all of them. I don't have to repeat them. And some of our colleagues have even lauded the fact that they are good, except that some of them also think they are not significant. But let me tell you, I want to read this thing from our PFM Act. The Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, Section 1. If you read 1 and 2, because of time, the 2A and B, a framework to support a sound fiscal policy and the macroeconomic management of public funds. And then the B, process for the preparation, approval, and management of a transparent, credible, and predictable annual budget. That one will be important because it says that the object of this act is to regulate the financial management of the public sector within a macroeconomic and fiscal framework. So tax policy management is calibrated in nature. This is what I hold for my brothers NDC, not just to say they've done worse or bad, but I'm making a point. 2014 to 2016. It's interesting, my brother, very good brother, Dr. Toforsen, very intelligent, but I think sometimes intellectual dishonesty. And what he's doing, and people would have done same. So I'm not trying to shade him or throw shade or anything. 3 years. Tax items that NDC government increased or introduced were 26, including condom and cryo tax. You remember financial those things. 2017, under His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, tax items we increase we reduce or took away entirely 17, including these same tax elements I'm talking about. Then we started increasing taxes under Nana Addo, and we even got to e-levy. So you either increase taxes, reduce, introduce, or otherwise, depending on your fiscal space. A country that we, from 2022, as I said, even global debt to GDP, which one of my senior brothers is saying that it is not important about how to pay. I'm even surprised, but then it's his own opinion. Debt to GDP globally was around 258%. I stand to be corrected. That was 2022. We had over 80%. And our only way out now is to recalibrate our tax policies and generate revenue internally to consolidate our fiscal space, restore the economy, and then move on. And this is what this government has been doing. But then in doing that, in the context of the manufacturing issue, the government had to listen to the people and make some, adjustments to suit the manufacturing industry, and also rolling in things that the globe even consider most. I mean, climate, energy, and also dealing with plastics and other things. So the tax policies that we are doing today is to consolidate our fiscal space, continue the restoration of our economy, and also build very stable and grow our economy. And it's extremely important that we do that. We are expansionary fiscal policy adopters as a government, as a capitalistic in nature in terms of fraternity. We are supposed to leverage the private sector, which we are doing. But of course, for you to generate revenue, look, the economy, we are negative effective tax rate economy. Meaning that annually, whether NDC and PP, taxes, monies that government spend, if you divide them among all the households, the amount each of them get is far more than monies government generate excluding loans. So we always run deficits, and it's a problem. Only about 2 million people out of 32 pay direct tax. And even indirect tax, there are leakages and problems, making us always not having enough money to move this economy forward. And this time that we are in, as a government, you remember, we had revenue shortfalls over 12 billion. Private sector had to sack about 40,000 people, payee, corporate tax, they all went down. But we still need to finance our goods and services and commit ourselves to our social contract. How can we do that? I want to ask this question, Samson. Those who are saying we shouldn't take taxes, our debt to GDP is high, so we need to slow down. Fine, I agree with them. What is the alternative? How are we financing our goods? They say, cut down government. I agree with them. How much are we going to get from cutting down government? And even the expenditure thing that we are talking, which I agree. That is why I'm saying that financial economics, they are about numbers, data. You cannot just make qualitative statement. It is very important. Maybe the advice I give to those who are directly linked to some of these management issues is to try and run both correlation and regression analysis to select items that do not impact our GDP very well and cut all of them away so we can cut more. But if we look at what this government is doing, but for some time propaganda, and look at this statement that exemptions are being given to cronies. By which definition and context? All the finance committee members, we have NDC and MPP. We look through all these things and approve them. So my brother, Honorable John Jinapo and Co. and Dr. Atufosi are saying that they supervise, they take part of approving those who are only cronies of MPP. You don't do these things. Does it mean that they don't qualify? Do they have processes that because they are cronies, they just overlook everything and approve or otherwise? Are they not Ghanaians? I think it is time that some of these propagandistic comments just for political interest, we should stop, because we can't keep on recycling all these issues. It won't help. And this communist inferior tactics, we should stop, because we are dealing with the economy. As far as I am concerned, what I am interested in today is our ability as a government to manage this economy very well and make sure that we are moving on, which you see, all the primary macro indicators are coming down. And what I agree with my other commentators this morning is that how can we translate these numbers into attaining the utility and satisfaction Ghanaians need? That is the key thing. But for anybody to say the numbers are not important, is it not the same numbers that give us that to GDP over 80 and people were complaining? Is it not the same numbers that gave us inflation up to about 50% that people were complaining? Now that it's 33, now that it's 66, now that we are picking growth and going, they are not important again. What manner of society is this? And let me also end with this, or let me speak about this. When we talk about industries, factories, companies doing well or otherwise, Samson, we always either intentionally or as a result of displaying intellectual dishonesty or ego trips concentrate only on the government. That is not true. We have a country that have very weak entrepreneurial ecosystems. If you like, let any government pick 1,000 entrepreneurs in Ghana, give them $1 million each, no interest rate. After 2 years, let them come and talk. So let's concentrate on all key stakeholder groups and individuals and work on them. That we also have to understand the fact that the opportunities government create, it is left with the entrepreneurs and investors to also take advantage of. Wasn't the same government that when we came, we reduced importation taxes by 50%? Car, if you bring car here, we reduce that by vehicles by 30%. What happened? And even the importers themselves, most of them, no matter how you reduce it, they also declare what they bring. So it is our own collective responsibilities to make sure that as a country, as much as I agree, the policymakers, such as the government...
The final part of the statement that Steve has made is so important. Often we ignore it. We are our own undoing in this country. We know it. And you see, there's one thing that I can never take away from you. As he spoke about the propaganda being done by the NDC, he admits that if they were in the NDC's situation place, they would have done the same. That's one thing
and that we should
that I can never take away from you. He was the guy who sat on this show and said they should delay this 2 and 4 deputy CEOs and all these, plenty of them, wasting our resources. He's in the government. But, well, will you be listening to? Yes,
in line with our goals.
I hear you. Yes. Don't refine.
You just catch me.
Yes, you are done. Yes.
Yeah, right. That sounds it.
The taxes, the increases, those that are the reliefs, and then the 5.5 billion you guys say they have come to Parliament and is going to cronies towards economic recovery and towards 1 trillion economy.
Well, Samson, thank you so much. Sometimes I'm really surprised that my colleague, especially the MP for Ishaiso and the Deputy Minister for that matter, will continue to rehash and state issues that are not true.
Oh, how?
That can never be proven.
No.
That he has no evidence.
For example,
he says that the NDC administration brought a kaya tax.
They always say it's a tax.
They always say it's a tax. But there's no truth in it.
Oh, is it?
There's no truth. There was no such tax handle.
Was there a levy or a toll?
I'm told maybe some municipal.
Yes, it was. It was. So it's a tax, is it not?
No. I'm saying some.
Okay.
Not even all.
Okay.
Some municipal. Please.
But there was no carry tax.
I'm saying that if a particular municipal assembly, in terms of management of its local issues, the assembly decided to do so, you don't come and placing it on a government. Because the government, we have the executive arm, did not sponsor any such tax.
The local authority is part of the government. But let's come to 2024 budget.
But let's be clear on that.
Okay.
Let's be very clear on that.
All right.
And that they did not repeal any kaya tax. You should show me evidence of government repealing any kaya tax.
That's fair.
No.
Please, let's
There's no such evidence.
Thank you. Unless you are showing.
Yes,
go ahead.
2017.
Go ahead.
Our budget.
He talked about
our budget statement.
That tax exemptions are done or taxes are added based on the physical space. When it gets to you, you feel it's based on space. When it is about somebody else, you think that it is what? Incompetence. The very same Abosokai people he referred to are the same people today who are crying and claiming that they were better off.
I have not referred to Abuso.
In 2016, of course, they basically lead importation of vehicles and vehicle parts. So when the minister himself went to parliament, he specifically mentioned them, that the Abuso kind people, there is good news for you. He specifically mentioned them. So I'm mentioning them because they are speaking today and exposing how bad this government has handled things. You knew all this, but you said you were moving from taxation
to production.
Today, you have moved from production to taxation, and more taxes, and more taxes, and more taxes. That is the situation we find ourselves in. And they have been so deceptive in the handling of what? Taxes. Yes, His Excellency talked about poultry, and you were particularly interested in the area of what? Poultry. They inherited a system where the previous administration had an arrangement that any importer of poultry will have to source a minimum of 40% from the local market. And in doing so, they have to also invest in that local market. Government itself was leading the way. The administration came in and decided to cancel this arrangement. And today, we are virtually importing 100%. The poultry industry is completely collapsed under them.
They're just misleading the public.
He talked about the tax exemption that you raised. The minority leader, or Honorable John Jinapo, did not say that that has been approved. He says the memo has come to Parliament, and he has given clear indication that our side, both on the Finance Committee and when it comes to the plenary, will vote against it. They made it very clear that the memo has come for these 47 companies, totaling almost the 5 billion, and we've made it really clear that we will oppose it at the Finance Committee level and we will oppose it at plenary. If he sits here and says, oh, it's not true, meaning that they have plans to go and withdraw the memo, fine enough. Then it saves the country these tax waivers for these cronies that we have identified. So it is not like it's gone as he claimed that they sat there and allowed it to go. It means that they didn't do their job well. Samson, this is the same government is telling us that inflation has come down. They want us to celebrate global
It's a fact. It's a fact.
Well, true. But your station did a very good job. And you picked some basic items and gave indication per the Ghana Statistical Services report about items that still have inflation higher than 50%. Samson, when you look at those items, these are items that are basically consumed in our households.
And the emphasis was also what the tax component does.
Exactly, that's to those things. That's to those things. And tilapia, tomatoes, cassava, corn dough, corn flour, rice, local rice, smoked fish, iodated salt that we have promoted that people must take iodated salt so it can reduce the goiter issues. Iodated salt, fried fish. After eating, you have to paste. We are being encouraged to paste at least, brush our teeth twice. Toothpaste. These basic consumables are way above 50%. And so the global inflation that we are celebrating, that is coming down, is not having a positive impact on the ordinary Ghanaian.
But when it goes up,
We have talked about, you see, Sticker sits and says that you project a 1 trillion economy. And he says, because it's a projection, when people are talking about it and analyzing it, it's a projection. And so, if it's a projection, what we sought to do is to say that even if you have a 1 trillion economy, GDP, and your inflation remains high, that 1 trillion is not driven by real and proper growth that gives jobs. It is a GDP that you have realized as a result of a higher inflation, and not because you have actually grown.
This is false.
How can it be false?
Please, inflation.
No, but
you don't understand what you're talking about.
You are projecting. You see. No. That's the problem he has. But he has a problem listening.
How can you say that projection that hasn't occurred is going to occur because of inflation?
Have you? We are talking about. Do we have inflation figures? Sure. Have you projected inflation also? Did you not project inflation 15%. Also? So if you,
how can 15% come down? You're saying that the growth will be inflation.
Sticker is noted for throwing out figures that are not there. You see
which one?
When you want to talk about growth, it is true that there's a world figure, but you need to compare with your peers. It's like you are in a school in Achimota, and you are not doing well, and you want to compare yourself to a JHS person in my village.
But what the government has done has been to compare developments today with 2016, 2017, and telling how things are improving.
And I'm saying that even in that trend, I am particularly interested in comparing ourselves with our peers.
All right.
So if you pick the global, and even in this budget, I'm sure maybe he didn't even go through it himself. They did Africa, they did Sub-Saharan Africa, and they did West Africa. If you look at the West African figures, the 3 countries that were listed there.
You need to conclude for me, and I need to help you to also get to
the list.
Program.
Ghana, 1.2%. Nigeria, 2.9%. Ivory Coast, that's La Côte d'Ivoire, 6.2%. So you don't go and pick a global figure and then deal with that.
Samson, economic sovereignty.
I came with the report of the Auditor General on the COVID funds. Every time the government talks, they want to give indication that it is as a result of COVID. The Auditor General, who they appointed, the Auditor General, they chased the previous one out and appointed somebody they think can do the work the way they will be satisfied.
What's the point with it?
The Auditor General's report suggests that COVID funds were completely messed up by this government. And so if you are complaining that you suffered because of COVID, the over 21 billion that was handed over to you, you messed it up.
All right.
This report, the Public Accounts Committee, we are yet to sit on it. And when we do, Ghanaians will see. It's been submitted to Parliament. It's been submitted to Parliament. When we sit on it, Ghanaians will
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll take a break. When we return, Kofi Bentil and Ken Ashigbe will tell us about the Conduct of Public Officers Bill briefly, and also about the crusade for complete prohibition of mining in forest reserves. Gentlemen, thank you very much. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Joining us in the very final segment is Kofi Bentil and Dr. Ken Ashigbe. Kofi Bentil is with Imani Africa. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for your time. Now, briefly, let's look at the question of the promise in the budget speech that the minister said, Mr. Speaker, the new Conduct of Public Officers Act seeks to address current weaknesses in the asset declaration system. The new act will introduce provisions to ensure public officers submit their declarations in a timely manner and that an effective verification system is in place. The draft bill is currently under consideration by Cabinet and will subsequently be submitted to Parliament. Occupy Ghana, which has been on the back of the government over this matter, repeated demands it's very clear that there has been deceit in the process and therefore is seeking specific timelines. Yes, Kofi, what do you say?
Right. I totally agree with Occupy Ghana, and it's unfortunate that our leaders pay lip service to this thing. And it is clear to me that unless we consistently demand that they do this and actually confront them with the fact that they have deliberately refused to do it because they are the ones who have to answer these questions. Where is the point in declaring assets and whatever it is if we are going to hide it? Here is a piece of legislation that they agree with in principle, but are refusing to pass. And we have not received one single good reason why they are not passing it. Here's the point. If you are not corrupt and you do not intend to be corrupt, you will pass this bill. If you are corrupt and you intend to hide your corruption, you will give us excuses for not passing this bill. There is no reason why it is not passed. The reason why it's not passed is because our leaders are corrupt and they intend to continue in their corruption, and they are hoping that we will forget it, but we will not forget it. We'll continue to remind them, and we'll continue to accuse them of trying to cover up their corruption by refusing to pass this simple bill that says that if the money is not for you, if you are somebody who is sitting over public finances and public resources, you have to account for it. If you cannot account for it, get up and leave.
You have always insisted, CSOs like your Imani, CDD, Occupy Ghana, IDEG, all of them come together, have always insisted that we need an effective, declaration of asset declaration regime. And to make it effective, there must be verification of the asset declared, and there must be publication. The minister is specific in saying that there will be an effective asset declaration regime, which will include a verification system. You must be happy about that.
No, we are not. We think that they are playing games with words, and unfortunately, they think we are all stupid. Look, Samson, the point we are making is very simple. If you go to the United States today, and I'm saying United States because they are more complex than us, they have more things to do and hide and everything. We are an infinite, like a small piece of that place. The president's salary is known. Everything that he takes from the government is known. If you step into public office, there is no privacy. If you think you want privacy in terms of how much you are earning, how much you are taking from taxpayers and whatever, don't go into public office. They do these things and they want to tell us that they have a right to sit over public resources, use it as they please, steal part of it, and not account to us for it. And we refuse that. So the point is this. There is no rocket science to this whole thing. We are saying, please, if you go into public office, declare. And the declaration must be a proper declaration. There must be transparency to it. It must be made public. Everybody must know. If you don't want that, don't go into public office. And look, over time, we keep seeing them. I don't want to go into the situations of this government, the corruption, the mismanagement. Young men leave school and go into public office. They were renting houses in slums, and then in 4 years, they have 3, 4, 5, 6 houses to share in a marriage divorce arrangement. We are simply saying they are not sincere about it, and we are confronting them. They are hoping that we will stop somewhere. We will not.
So what are you going to do? Because in the Occupy Ghana statement, you have various occasions when they clearly show the deceit from the government, including from cabinet itself, where it had told those it needed to tell, and you say, based on a blatantly false claim, it said that the bill's provisions already existed in other legislation. And then Occupy Ghana said, we contested this and ultimately provided to cabinet a 20-page table that demonstrated the differences in provisions. Despite our efforts, a 16 June 2023 letter from cabinet merely acknowledged our communication, offering no resolution, and so on. So how do you ensure that this gets done? But why are you not sure that this will be done? Because this is now tied to the IMF program.
Well, like I said, and I repeat, we are not confident that this government or any other government is sincere about this because it affects them. Now, Occupy Ghana is doing a brilliant job continuing the pressure on that, and that will continue. All of us are in support of it. When it gets to the time we have to go to court or other things, we will go to court. But at this point, really, it is about ensuring and insisting that they do the right thing and putting them to shame. In this election season, it's going to be one of the things we are going to keep pushing.
Right.
I mean, everybody who is campaigning campaigns and says they will not be corrupt, etc., we will reflect this on them and insist that they do it. It will come to a point where we may have to get out, go onto the street, sit in front of them, stare them down, and give them a timeline to do this thing. You know, so we'll use every tool available to us. Go to court, you know, keep writing, keep pushing them. But what they must understand is that if you want privacy in your affairs, don't go into public office. If you go into public office and you are sitting over public resources, some of which you steal, you will be forced to declare and be transparent about how you use it. We are sick and tired of people just going to raise their capital in government.
Dr. Kenneth Sigbe, I don't know if you have some brief comments to make about this before you go to the joint statement you issued with Occupy Ghana on the need for a clear prohibition of mining in forest reserves. And the Catholic Bishops' Conference also ended their conference and have issued a statement in which they support your call and say mining in forest reserves must be banned completely. Dr. Kenneth Sigbe.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. I'm not too sure I need to add anything more to what Kofi has said. You know, the challenge we have in this country is that it is the contraption we call parliament and we call our political elite. You know, they self-perpetuate themselves. So they would not pass this thing ordinarily. And maybe the IMF might force them to do it. But we need to keep the pressure on them because this is about they themselves being transparent. And if you look at it, the 1992 political experiment has only benefited the political elite. And I think you make that, I think it was Kofi that made that point about people who we see, start off from school, just out of school and get into politics with nothing. And in no time, they are making all the money. And it's just because of the lack of transparency. So it is really important that this happens.
Okay.
And at the back of all of this that we are having, the conversation about illegal mining, is the fact that a lot of the politically exposed people themselves are benefiting from this illegality that is killing all of us. And to think that we have a law that is called the Environmental Protection Regulation, and then into brackets, we put in that mining in forest reserve. You know, how paradoxical can it be again? You know, and so it is so important that we ask Parliament, this law, this LI, and I'm sure the parliamentarians will tell us that when LIs come, they don't scrutinize it as much as they ought to do, and it's just put in there, you will need 2/3 majority. But which of the minority even in Parliament told us that this LI has been submitted to them in November last year? For all of us to see that this thing has been done, only for us, to be surprised about the fact that it was passed and it's been gazetted and now it is currently done. And then on the back of that, you have High Street Ghana Limited then applying to go and mine in the Kakum Forest Reserve. And so it is, and not only is the Kakum Forest Reserve the one that has been desecrated and really been bastardized, but you know that the works that Erastus has done, the Apraprama Forest Reserve, you had a situation where a camp, CSK Alaska, Heritage Imperial would go in there. I think there was one company first, unique something that Heritage Imperial are directors of. They go in there and go and get reclamation license. The first one gets it, the second one goes for reclamation license for the same thing, and then they go for prospecting license. And with that prospecting license, they go mining in that forest reserve, which is an illegality. They even have the guts to go to court. And when they are prosecuting, bringing a case against Erastus, they talk about their mining operation. When the EPA tells us that they don't have a permit to do mining, and these people, nothing is happening to them. We have another forest reserve, the Tano Nimri Forest Reserve, and then you have the MPP's Ashanti Regional Chairperson as one of the directors of Akonta Mining, who are engaged in this illegality. The minister calls them out. The Minerals Commission calls them out, and nothing has happened to them, even with all the petitions that we have done. You go into the Kokosua Forest Reserve in Seshi Dabias. As we speak now, there are people in that forest reserve, desecrating it. The Upper Wasa Forest Reserve, it's almost half of it is gone. The Subim Forest Reserve in Bekwai has been dealt with. Tiwa Forest Reserve, there are people currently in there mining. So even without this LI that had come in place, you have people getting into the forest reserves and mining them. So it is really important that we step back, not only repeal this law, not only ensure that the president does not even have the power, like they did with the Achimota Forest, where then they can declare that a forest reserve is no more forest reserve. We need to ensure that there's a law, a fiat in place that says that mining in a forest reserve is a no-no.
Dr. Ken Ashigbe, is that not too much? Because like you, Media Coalition Against Galamsey, Occupy Ghana, and now joined by the Catholic bishops, you are saying, and the Catholic bishops, their statement, let me just read this paragraph for you. They say, we are also concerned about the introduction of the Environmental Protection Mining in Forest Reserves Regulation 2022, LI 2462, which seemingly allow mining even in globally significant biodiversity areas. We urge the government to take a critical look at this LI and, as a matter of urgency, either amend or repeal it in order to forestall the alarming trend of ecological destruction in the country. Now, they talk about Galamsey before they come because we have lost the fight. Is it not what you should be asking, rather, that the laws that allow mining in forest reserve should be enforced in such a way that there can be responsible mining, and not to say a complete repeal, there should be a complete ban on mining in forest reserves?
So, Samson, let's go back again and look at, and you see, so speaking as wear my hat as an engineer, it is important to do a total cost benefit of mining in forest reserves. That you have mined in, you have other places that you are mining, and then you have left a few places out. Bear in mind that currently there's all this carbon trading that you can do. So there are benefits that you get from leaving the forest the way it ought to be done. Bear in mind also that a lot of our water bodies, they take their sources from these forest reserves. So once you start going into those forest reserves and dealing with them, you are unable to restore them. Let the government show us examples of any of these forest reserves that we have mined out of them. That's one, that the people in those places are better off than they were before we started mining. Then two, the issues of the challenges with our water bodies, the issues with the fact that currently as we speak, you go into some of these places that mining is taking place. And most of the time, illegal mining follows it. You find out that, the incidence of kidney diseases are on the rise. The level of deformation of children that have been born. So when you look at the cost to us as a country, it is important that we put a halt to this. And if even we're going to do it, then we need to have very clear strategies in place. Okay. That shows us that we will be able to mine, restore these places back to the positions that they were. And not only that, make sure that the people around that, and even us as a country, will be better off than it.
All right.
Samson, we've been doing all of this mining. Look at where we are currently with our economy. We had to go back to the IMF.
Thank you, Dr. Ken Ashigbe, convener of the Media Coalition Against Galamsey, together with Occupy Ghana, and the Catholic Bishops' Conference, seeking a complete prohibition of mining in forest reserve. Kofi, is complete prohibition what to do rather than a state enforcing the law for responsible mining?
It should be complete prohibition. Samson, please, there is what is called a forest, and there is what is called a mine. A forest is not a mine. That's one. Number two, we have forest reserve. The whole sense of a forest reserve is that it remains a forest, but amongst forests, it is reserved. There is nothing called responsible mining in a forest reserve. Those words must never be put together. So please, it is about a complete ban. These laws are specifically designed to facilitate
the rip of the forests. And they were passed by these people who are doing the rip of the forest. So Samson, we are not missing words. A forest must remain a forest, not a mine. A forest reserve cannot be responsibly mined. So please, they shouldn't amend that law. They should delete it. It is there to facilitate things like mining Kakum. And if we leave it there, one day we'll wake up and Kakum has been mined. Please delete that law. Otherwise, very soon, we'll be dumping trucks of earth in front of Parliament and in front of the people who are doing this thing. We are sick and tired of people. Look, there are people in the villages who don't get anything from the state. And they are bearing children who are suffering from cyanide and co. What again do we want? When they see people take up all kinds of things in their, total frustration, they understand what is going on. Why should somebody suffer simply because you want to make a bit of money? There is nothing like responsible mining in the forest. Delete that LI.
Thank you very much. Kofi Bentil is lawyer and senior vice president, Imani Africa. And this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Newsfile. It's brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa. As strong as a group, as close as a partner. We also have other sponsors. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 solid years. Duroplast, where Duroplast goes, water flows. They are responsible for PVC and HDPE pipes and water tank. DBS Industries, roofing Papa Fie. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex tanks, it's strong and it's tough. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Seed, that's self-employed enrollment drive. It's your future, so own it. Best Brain Publication, tomorrow education today. And Haptel, it's everything you. And as always, join me tomorrow 2 p.m. on the Joy News channel for The Law. And I'm engaging George Bafor Asari, a 3-year lecturer, Faculty of Law, GIMPA, on law for prosperity. What should be done to ECOWAS's regimes to make sure that Africa can prosper from its wealth. My outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. Have a good afternoon.